Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing fine, thank you.
Good.
We want to start off with talking about the biggest meeting there has been in the history of the world, NATO's meeting.
Yep, today. Yep.
To conspire against the people. And you know, this is totally useless. If they'd only done what, one senator way back, Robert Taft, thought, and I agree with him. I still say, what's the answer to all this?
Yeah.
Just get out of NATO and get out of the United Nations, all this stuff. Because personally, I don't believe in it, and I think constitutionally they're not really proper under the Constitution. But we're in all these organizations, and I would say that even the opinion of the founders, they didn't like entangling alliances. This is really entangled, and it's perpetual, and they play their games. There's demagoguing going on. A lot of money is spent. And, it's okay if they just argue and fuss and fume and have a few trade fights. But usually that kind of stuff, and we've been warning about it for a long time, leads to a hot war. Now people are dying, It's so unnecessary. It's just not necessary. For all this, but there is a meeting. They're trying to decide, and I'm convinced that as always, I think both sides really want peace. There was one problem: each side wants peace on their terms, and that's not possible because the war is still going on and is accelerating, and we have a few points here to make that NATO's not backing away. Most of the time NATO, even when they're involved, you don't hear as much from them, but they've been involved in a lot of things going on, just about everything that we do militarily. But this time they're very open about maneuvering, and I don't know if they're as verbal about it. But if Ukraine speaks along with NATO, they are demagoguing and say maybe it's a little stronger than demagoguing. There could be World War III.
Yeah.
I don't think they believe that, but that's their effort to scare people. And unfortunately, sometimes those scare tactics backfire because they come about true. Even though right now, I'm not in that category and saying, next month we're going to have World War III stuff. And I just hope I'm right about that. But I just hope that somebody will come up with some brains and we'll look for something positive today and figure we moved it in the right direction. Maybe there'll be a shift in attitude.
Yeah, It's unlikely, though, this emergency meeting in Brussels, and the President Biden's there, so I'm sure he's got a good handle on everything, and he's got everyone under control. But, Dr. Paul, it's always a challenge to get Americans emotionally involved when the elites want war or when the elites push war propaganda. And you have to hire PR firms, and we talked about yesterday that great piece from Dan Cohen in Mint Press News, which you can actually see now on ronpaulinstitute.org website, about all of the PR firms that are hired, all of the compliance with the TV, the media, the social media. It's all put together in a big package to get Americans emotionally invested in a matter that actually has zero to do with U.S. actual national security. It has nothing to do, the border dispute between Russia and Ukraine has nothing to do with the United States. It doesn't affect us in any way, shape, or form. Yet, of course, as we know from 2014, we've been involved. We've been involved since then. We spent billions of dollars building up their military, emboldening them to challenge this. So this is what you have. So now you have NATO finally acting in Europe to deal with a crisis in Europe. And so what do? They get back together in Brussels. They have a big meeting. They have a crisis meeting. They have this big, long list damning Russia for what it's done. It's not that it shouldn't be condemned for starting violence, but this violence did start in 2014. But the issue, and I wanted to just bring this up, Dr. Paul, and go through a couple, because the way NATO is behaving, talking about more weapons, more manpower, more troops in Eastern Europe, it's actually in violation of the NATO Charter. And let's put up this first. I went back and looked at the NATO Charter. It's pretty gross. It's pretty bad anyway. But here's Article 1. The parties undertake as set forth in the Charter of the United Nations to settle any international dispute in which they may be involved by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered, and to refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force in any manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United States nations. So regardless of how you view the situation, the idea that the response of NATO, rather than, as according to its charter, looking for peaceful disputes, that would mean hosting high-level discussions on how to end the conflict, how to deconflict, how better to deal with the evacuation corridors. No, rather than any of these things that its charter demands, it sends more weapons, more troops, more intelligence, more targeting information to ratchet up the war and make the Russians that much more irritated to the point where God knows what's going to happen. You're right. So NATO is actually acting against its charter to ratchet up the aggression and bring us closer to war. The opposite of what it was founded to do.
That's sure the case. You know, they are ratcheting up, and they usually start, so World War III could start, which it always could start. But we in the United States have followed a policy, you know, for as long as I can remember, looking at foreign policy, and that is you have to have a two-front strategy. You have to be prepared for 2 major wars in the world, 3 maybe if you need to. You have to just be ready. And, you know, right now, and they shift back and forth, you know, a year ago, I think 90% of the troubles stirring in the world were all due to China. And then all of a sudden China, has been less talked about. It has to be Russia, and there seems to be a group of people doing the same thing. But right now, even with this group, I think of these people as the super hawks, and I don't know whether they're super strategists and they know what they're doing, or they're super ignorant.
Yeah.
But now, you know, involved in this, with all this mess, our president, all the things that he has done to mess up, say, the energy industry and stir up all these problems, and he's one that, you know, is for stirring up another one in China, and they're talking about that under these circumstances. Why don't they solve one at a time? Why don't they? Why were they compelled to do it? I can't believe, you know, each country has some problems, but what happened in the last? I don't know when the switch was turned off. Calm down a little bit on China.
Yeah.
Now we have to do is get Russia. Oh yeah. It might have even been American domestic policies.
Yeah.
You know, it was this stuff. You know, Russia is a bad guy, and Trump does business over there.
Yeah.
And then it turns out it was all a lie anyway. So that's a shame. But I don't know. There are super hawks, but and it's carried out by some people. And the antagonists there are super ignorant because they don't realize how dangerous it is. They throw words around, but I don't think they really believe half of what they say. But it's just too bad. And you know, that statement you read about NATO, I was listening. That is not, you know, the worst statement in the world.
No, it's not. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, your complaint was they don't even follow their own rules.
Yeah.
You know, and this. But it's all deception is what it is, and I think there's a lack of an understanding of human nature on how it works. And once you divide, you know, you have these sides, and it gets politicized. You have this antagonism. There's a split in our country. But the propagandists in our country is pretty darn good when promoting war, which is a real shame. And that to me is one of our biggest problems. But just think of the antagonism being built and the concession by most people in this country that the real enemy was COVID.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden now, COVID has turned out to be. It looks like it's going to be a fizzle, and people are recognizing it. So they have to have support, and I think the introduction of the social media is really what has changed the nature of the demagogues and their ability to demagogue these issues.
Yeah, it's really a tool in the arms of the government. But you know, you mentioned when you were talking, I was thinking it's kind of funny that this whole escalation started just as Nord Stream 2 was about to go online. Remember, Biden kind of gave it the okay. We're not gonna shut it down. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, here comes this massive problem, and you think, well, big oil wouldn't do that, and big oil and gas wouldn't do that, just as so they can send U.S. LNG across the ocean in ships. They wouldn't do that, would they? Oh, Big Pharma wouldn't profit from scaring Americans to death about a virus, would they? That wouldn't happen. Well, the military-industrial complex wouldn't raise billions of dollars on fake threats to the U.S., would they? I mean, at some point you have to see the deep, deep corruption in our society that allows the elites to live in an unbelievable level of luxury while the rest of us continue to get poorer and poorer.
You know, my assessment that you know, trade is a benefit, because if you do trade, you're less likely to fight with them. And I always thought this is a good idea. The Europeans can get cheaper energy. They can work more with the Russians. There would be a motive for both sides. You'd think Germany would be pleased and a little bit sensible, but all of a sudden Germany, you know, rolls over.
Yeah.
When at that point when you said all of a sudden our president changed his mind, all of a sudden, you know, and they do that. It's self-defeating. It hurts themselves by doing this,
Yeah.
and because they could have been. Now the Europeans are begging that we sell them more gas.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
You saw that article, yeah.
But that was the whole thing. That's the reason that we stopped it. Is we wanted them to. But now by the time they're coming around in Germany, okay, we'll buy it from you guys, but where are you going to produce it? You know, your production is way down. You know, they just don't. They don't have any desire, nor do they understand how markets work. That is the biggest thing. They think, and they're convinced that they're smarter than anybody, you know, that wants to promote a free market and sort it all out. They don't know. The only thing they know is there is no invisible hand sorting things out. There's only an iron fist to dictate the rules and regulations.
Yeah. Well, here's how is NATO violating its charter? Well, here are just a few clips that I found at random, and I know you've seen a few of them, but let's just go through them. I mean, NATO's mission is to peacefully solve these problems. And let's not forget, this is a non-NATO member, Ukraine. Here we go. Here's from the New York Times, I think. NATO doubles its battle groups in Eastern Europe ahead of multiple summits. Next one, here's Jens Stoltenberg, who's now become Fauci. He's famous. Here's him today. NATO provides significant military support to Ukraine. It's trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. So here he's admitting that we're training soldiers and helping them fight. They are not a NATO member. They are not a NATO ally. We're training them to help kill Russians. Here's the next one. The UK doubles the number of missiles sent to Ukraine ahead of NATO summit. 6,000 more missiles. And one more. This is from the Washington Post. NATO countries pour weapons into Ukraine, risking conflict with Russia. All of these, I would suggest, Dr. Paul, are absolutely diametrically opposed to that Article 1 of the NATO Charter.
Yeah, right. You know, the issue of China is interesting because it's very, very important, and some people won't leave it alone. But right now, the big fight is between two groups, and they're very precise, and everybody should be able to see it, because I think it is NATO, United States versus Russia. And every single day we see something going on there, and it's being ratcheted up constantly. Each side has to act tough, or they can get hit back at home. You know, right now in this country, if you know, as ridiculous as Biden has been, you know, if you had the libertarians in charge right now, they would get a lot of grief.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you get criticized for defending liberty. You know,
Yeah.
so they would. That to me is a serious problem, and it won't be solved as long as we have people that are motivated by other things than for peace and honesty and individual liberty. When they're not motivated by that, they fear it.
Yeah.
They can't stand it. That's why liberty means you can discuss these issues. So what is the first thing that they must do? It's been throughout history. Close down the dissent.
Yeah.
You know, and it's and now instead of being more difficult because you have the internet, it looks like it's becoming easier because they've infiltrated everything.
Yeah. Just
And
flip
then
a
you have all the economic interventions. The economic interventions, instead of doing what I want, you know, the pipelines bringing people together, it just becomes another military tool.
Yeah.
So it's it's a tough situation. So that's the reason I think the only solution is you have to change the attitude of people on an individual basis. And as long as you have the immoral souls out there dictating all the rules, and they don't even care about law and order and morality in law, it's going to be tough. But still, there are a few times when that's the only choice we have.
Yeah. Well, I guess our next segment is we could call it unintended consequences, and we can actually put that next one up. I think you've got it over there on your other stack. Put up this next one. This is from Zero Hedge. U.S. reportedly agrees to house 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. Here's another thing that happened at the summit. A week after, go back, please. A week after it was reported that several major Polish cities have reached capacity, President Biden is set to announce that we're going to take in 100,000 refugees. So this is something for all those conservatives that are breathing heavily toward war, who nevertheless want our borders closed. Guess what? Here comes 100,000 new Democrat voters. And let's put up this next one. This is from the same article. And this is very important, actually, because it's not going to be these poor people that are burned out of their homes. This is from the Zero Hedge article. Bear in mind that this virtuous act of asylum provision could be abused. No, that wouldn't happen, would it? As we recently noted, according to an investigation by newspaper Le Figaro, around 1/3 of the Ukrainian refugees arriving in France are actually economic migrants from other areas of the world, mostly North Africa and the Middle East. So people that are braying for war here that don't want to open our borders, and I hope they at least check them for Nazi tattoos when they let them in, but they're going to have all of these migrants coming in, looking for a handout. It's going to be a huge burden on the U.S., unintended consequences.
Yeah, and they would want to paint this because we are humanitarians and we want to take care of all the people we've caused troubles for. But this is sort of strange. I see our foreign policy actually working hand in glove with the one world people, and the people who, the first time I ever read about the Soros type of thing, he was talking about, what some libertarians would talk about.
Yeah.
There's a time when it would be more like the United States, where you could be free to go back and forth and move about, and the world be that way. And they talk about a borderless
open
world,
society.
The open society, and yet so we don't have just Ukraine right now. We have Iraqis and Afghanis, and there'd be nothing wrong with that, because in a free society there would be that. In the early part of our history, when we were much freer, we had rules about immigration, but there was a lot of mixture. The term was a melting pot, and as this kept going on and getting more complex, I said, they took that and turned it into the boiling pot, and that's what's happening now when the rules is sort of like when there are no rules in a city, and there's no punishment and no right or wrong, and it's still going on. What were they doing in L.A. this week? Once again, no penalties. Do what you want. Steal whatever you want. And the people who are really the criminals are if you defend your own property.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, well, the next one, I think, if you think we're done with this is the FBI. They are trolling the Russian embassy. Let's put this up. This is from the Washington Post. Want to talk? FBI trolls Russian embassy for disgruntled would-be spies. And on the one hand, that's their job. I mean, I don't know about the FBI, but certainly the CIA. That's a job of an intelligence agency, and that's understandable in the situation. But here's what's interesting. If you turn to that next clip, this is from that article. The ads, so these are ads that are appearing trying to get Russians in the Russian embassy to start giving intelligence info to the U.S. The ads, which appear on Facebook, Twitter, and Google, are carefully geographically targeted. A Washington Post reporter standing next to the embassy stone walls on Wednesday morning received the ad in their Facebook feed. But the ads did not appear in the feed when the reporter stood on the other side of Wisconsin Avenue. So basically, the social media companies are accommodating the FBI by allowing ads to go into that geographic location of the Russian embassy. And I think that's interesting because it shows that they're acting again as government agents and combatants.
Yes, and here's a statement that confirms what you were saying. U.S. tech giants have been instrumental for America's campaign to discredit the Russian government's rationale for attacking Ukraine. They collaborated with the Western governments in banning Russian media outlets in there. We've seen all that and have mentioned that. So once again, the social media is not an example of good, healthy economic growth in a free society. It's an example of a collusion between big government and business. And I think the other day I mentioned that I think there's a time when we might overuse the word fascist, even though it might be it might be rather accurate in it. That I like to use the word of interventionist, but the other thing is corporatism, because the left still and the progressives still like that term, but because they have been challenged. You guys are used to be against these corporations. It came up, with COVID. Why are you guys for all this stuff? The left went along with all this corporatism, and the drug companies making all this money. But I think corporatism is a description of what goes on, and they're very much in business, and they do well. And you take the pharmaceutical industry, the military industry, they all do quite well, and it has essentially nothing to do with protecting liberty, but it has a lot to do with undermining liberty and bankrupting our country and enhancing the power and the authority of just a few. And right now, it's unbelievable how much power and authority people have, and how these instruments. Here's another example of how the social media and the advertising industry is being used to undermine our system.
Yeah. Well, it's chilling whenever there's a crisis. It's chilling to see the social media companies go running to government saying, how can we help you push your narrative? How can we help you push your narrative? They're supposed to be, even under the carrier thing, they're not publishers. They're just facilitators of conversation. Can you imagine if the phone companies, went to the government? How can we stop people from talking about things you don't want to talk about?
Well, click your phone.
Yeah.
Of course, they listen to everything.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll finish on a good news story if we put that last one up, Dr. Paul. This one. This is you alluded to it earlier on, that last clip, or that second to last clip. You can put it up. Top airline CEOs sent a letter to Biden demanding a return to normalcy. Pretty good news?
Boy, I think so. Yesterday I talked a little bit about a statement made by Alex Berenson. And he came out and he had a great headline in this article. It was the COVID vaccine era is ending already.
Yeah.
So it's sort of burned out. And all of a sudden it's just looks like it's going to die off. But of course, you can't ever tell what might happen. But right now, those few who promoted optimism said, time will come and people will wake up and the mothers will go to the meetings and say, look, enough is enough. But here's what's happening in the airlines. There's a few people, including myself, I don't want to get on those airplanes. Yeah. But I think we should have put our foot down, with the TSA, after 9/11, because that is what started all this off. But all of a sudden, all the airlines have big companies, and so we lumped them into this category. They rolled over.
They did.
And so maybe there's a little bit of a spark there left, because how many all the major airlines,
all the majors,
sent a letter.
Yeah.
Sent a letter to the top and sent a letter to Biden demanding return to normalcy. The 1920s again, return to normalcy. But we can always improve on normalcy because we want to sort it all out, because we want to emphasize liberty and not authoritarianism, and that to me is the big issue. But no, I think it's good. I think that Berenson was right about that. That this is coming to an end, and all of a sudden the next day we get this article.
Yeah,
boy, he's a powerful person.
Yeah.
And I got to saying, I don't think they did him a favor.
Yeah.
They don't. The mainstream media is not exactly that friendly with him.
No, not at all. But it is important. 11 CEOs wrote to the president saying, "Hey, no more mask mandates on the planes. It's done, and we don't want any more of this forced COVID screening before international travel as you've had." just be done with it. Be done with it. And I think a lot of Americans feel that way as well. And I hope it's successful. I hope they listen. The president listens to these people. They should never have been allowed to do it in the first place, and hopefully they'll never try it again. Although we know they'll try it again, But
let me follow up on that, because when they made that statement, the proper statement that followed was, if you believe in masks, wear them.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, but that's the insult they don't want. They can't stand the idea that didn't work.
Yeah.
And but the people who don't want to wear them, I don't think people are going to get hysterical. Let's hope not, because they've been more hysterical about rules that were written for wearing it, and one person standing up for their own rights and did not believe that there was that much danger.
Yeah.
That's when the conflict was. But no, in a normal time, because it's already been done in a minor way. Because if you saw a person on an airplane with a mask on, you might think that they might have cancer or something like that,
disorder,
and they're more not so much a difficult to filter out a virus. It might be just an old-fashioned strep throat they want to protect themselves against. So that is the answer. Volunteerism is a great principle. Two sides of any issue, social, religious, sexual, anything. Both sides should be in agreement, and all of a sudden, there'd be no fighting.
No fighting. I would have loved to have seen it where there'd be one airline that required them and one airline did it. Let the best man win. That would have been funny. But I want to close, by thanking everyone for supporting the show. You watch the show, you help our numbers. Please, if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. Please make a comment, help the algorithms any way you can, sprinkle some magic powder over it, whatever it takes. But put up that last link. And also, and I don't do this very often, but I do want to say that if you want to help the show continue going, and there are expenses involved in the show, put up that last clip, please. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org. That's the parent 501c3 charity that runs the show. And you click that button that says support over there, and you can make a tax-deductible contribution to help the Institute, to help the show. We've got a lot of things planned this year. We've got a couple of conferences. We're redoing our website. We've got a couple of other things that we're going to announce soon. So it all depends on your support, and you've been very generous with us over the years, and we appreciate it very much. So we hope you'll also be able to keep us going.
Sounds to me like you're going to be very busy.
It's going to be a busy year, which is good. It makes me very happy.
Good. I want to follow up a little bit about our so-called friend and leader of the COVID movement, and that is Dr. Fauci, because I'm worried about him a little bit, because with this COVID hysteria ending right now, what's he going to do? I mean, he could become a serious problem to himself and to all of us. He might not adapt very well. I see he sort of disappeared, but in the last couple of days, it must be very frustrating. All I believe is a guy like that who had sudden, horrendous, tremendous fame after all those years, even if he was the richest bureaucrat we've ever had, made more money than anybody else, that he loves the money. He was satisfied with that. But now he had fame and fortune. So I think he may need some guidance on just how to handle this, because I think he loves the limelight, and there'll have to be something done about it. But that's the way a lot of this happens with the politicians. They love the limelight, and I've met so many people who once they told me they were running for office, finally, I believe like you do in this, but they ran, and then they changed their minds. They had to become more pragmatic. Ron, they say, you're too impractical. I said, well, authoritarianism and welfareism and warfareism, I don't think there's anything practical about that. I think the only practical way in the real sense is to have the freest society that you can have, because authoritarianism leads to all these problems, antagonism, and eventually violence, and eventually people want to fight a war over it. So I don't think those principles are difficult. I think they're simple to understand. It just has to be a few people speaking out. Like, we see one article on Barris and say, it looks like it's all over, folks. Let's go. And the next day, the airline owners signed a letter to the president. We've had enough of this, and this occurred with the masks in the schools. So it is. Prevailing attitudes are important. Ideas are important, and these principles are important. And most people who had been lured into accepting this stuff usually did it, because they thought it was the right thing to do, and the government's supposed to be helpful to us, and they wanted to go along with it. So, but then it takes a while for people to wake up. People support the wars before and as soon as they get started, but it takes a lot of killing and nonsense to go on. Right now, this war it became a hot war here a month ago in Ukraine. It could get a lot worse, and it's so unnecessary. But right now, it looks like those kind of battles are still going to be with us. The best we can do is advise and try to understand best how to promote a system of peace and prosperity, because I think that's what the American people really want. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.